My name is Zedek, and welcome back to Timberborn and the Settlement of the Steeltide. We're playing the Terraces map on hard mode, and we are rapidly reaching the end of this playthrough. But before I finish this out, one of the last things I'd like to do is terraform the rest of this map to be green. And that's just what I started last episode, and what I'm really hoping to do a lot of today. So if you're new to this playthrough, a quick bird's eye view, you can see we've got roughly maybe half of the map green at this point. So last episode, when I started the terraforming effort, I've been concentrating on this left half of the map, where you can see we've got the northwest corner, basically good to go at this point, and this was accomplished using all sorts of underground rivers thanks to Update 7. It doesn't look as impressive in the south, but what I've been working on here is trying to cover my entire power plant over in water. So the idea is I can get this last little segment covered, and then maybe I can have some extra water tank there. Of course, everything over here is fair game next, and I think there's a lot of options in here. On the terraces map here, there's lots of way to make pools and ponds, and combined with pipes and 3D dirt, I think I've got a lot of potential things I could do over here. Now, before I jump into terraforming new land, I would like to at least develop this a little bit. Right now it's just a green wasteland, and I think we should put some crops, trees, or other stuff in here so it doesn't just look so dead. Now, one of the first things I'm going to start with is this pond over here. I think this pond is going to be a good place for mangrove trees for our main central district. And since I want easy access to this from up high, I'm going to see if I can take advantage of that new tubeway building to go from the top of the mesa straight vertically down without staircases. So I'm thinking I can create these platforms here, add some space for a forester, a gatherer, and then just this straight up vertical pipe. I'm not given the size of these tubeway stations is probably not saving me that much space, but I want an excuse to play with them a little bit more. And then we can plan on mangroves filling all of this extra space. Now I have to check. I don't know how far that one forester can reach. Can he get everything? Well, most of everything. Also, this is kind of interesting. So you notice this. Normally, when you click a building, you get the area of effect that building can reach. And I noticed when I clicked on the forester, it is actually giving building up here an option, which means foresters can do their daily work through the tubeway. That's pretty cool. I think that opens up some other options. I think the way that tubeways and these new buildings work is they're basically just faster pathways. And so when these buildings calculate their range of effect, it's just assuming a faster pathway that they can use. With the mangroves going down, this spot is looking good. Now, let's take a look back at the rest of this to figure out what else we should develop. Well, I do see this dead space up here on top of this mesa. I don't really have a use for it, but while I'm here, I might as well terraform it. So I'm just going to dynamite this lip off. And you know what? I think I'm just going to create a type of retaining pond up here for more mangroves. And as I said, I don't really need more industry or anything at this point, so it may just look kind of interesting to have a pool of water up high like this. Oh, and as water rushes in, I realize I just made a mistake here. This road has power in it and just goes right off the bridge there. I should not have destroyed that all the way to the edge. So we'll just stick some dirt in there really quick. Hopefully that won't be too bad. But while that water comes rushing in, I'm just going to throw down another forester, another scavenger, and then put in mangroves everywhere. Hey, that should be a nice extra supply to our food, because I feel we're always running short on mangroves. Now, next up, what to use all of this for? You know, as I look at this, we really don't need a lot of resources at this point, so a lot of this is just decorative. I think the only thing I could really use more of is kohlrabi. So I'm thinking maybe we can just do like decorative farms for a bunch of this, and then maybe use kohlrabi for part of it so it's partially utilitarian, and then maybe just decorate natural forests here and there. So maybe I can kind of figure out what I want things to look like first, and then I can just strategically place down some farms and other stuff. Now, I could do just massive, massive fields, but I think what would look a little bit more interesting is creating like tree lines. Then we could just stick down a farmland and then something to hold all that food. Then I'll put down a quick forester just to get access to all those trees. And same with this pocket. I don't think this pocket is really valuable to me. I'm just gonna sprinkle in some natural trees. You know, I don't think I have a single birch tree on this entire map. Maybe that would be kind of good to mix it up a bit. make it look a little bit more natural. And other than that, I think I'm just going to repeat kind of that pattern. I'm just going to create kind of a patchwork quilt of farmlands in this valley. I think that would look good, giving me something like this. Now, this is going to take a while to build, and I have a feeling I'm not going to keep this fully operational all the time, but I'm going to get beavers in here, plant all these stuff, and then probably just leave it. But you can see I've tried to create almost like individual farms. And each farmhouse kind of has its crop. And I've tried to create kind of divider lines between the farmers. I'm going for a very Hobbiton-like vibe. I'm hoping this works out. And again, I'm not really collecting much food for any of this, so the only things I'm bothering to keep storage for is kohlrabi, because we could use that. But, you know, everything else is more or less just decorative. So that's that farming valley. Let's see, what could we do for the upper mesa here? You know, the northern district right now is really known for its tree farm, and I've got lots of tree storage here. I think I'm going to continue in that noble tradition for them. Instead of food, especially since these are bots in the northern district, they have no reason for food, I'm just going to continue making this a tree farm. So all of this, I think, is fair game just to be a giant, massive forest. Let's see, all these roads that I've got up here are kind of a callback to construction, so I don't want to get too caught up with them. But let's see, where could I put a forester to get nice range for all of this? I think I'm going to need probably at least 3 of them up here. One over here would cover a ton, and then probably one somewhere down here. Actually, I could reuse some of that dead space, would be perfectly fine. Clean up all the roads and materials that we don't need anymore. And this area is kind of interesting. I do want something on that bridge, because I really wanted to see about growing stuff on top of an aqueduct. So at least for now, let's create 2 foresters so we can populate that. Actually, this guy can get to one half, this guy can get to the other half. With all that said and done, we're now going to just try to make this all trees. And I'm thinking I'll probably divvy it up between the types, giving me something like this. So you can see I've gone kind of tree crazy here. Everything down in the bottom I didn't really care about. I just wanted like a really dense forest. So I put oak all through here. And then on top of the mesa, I actually decided I would make this kind of a secluded park. So I've got a tribute to all the fallen beavers going into making this series, and then kind of just this secluded, nice, protected area in between all the trees up there. Once all these trees are down, I'm going to remove them from planting, so it should hopefully just look like a natural forest. Alright, that is the whole northern corner of this map taken care of. It's going to take a while to build some of that stuff, so let's go start looking at the rest of the map. In particular, I want to take a look back at our power plant. And you can see I've started to cover this thing up. And the whole point of me doing this is I want to see if I can actually disguise the fact that there's a power plant here altogether using 3D dirt. And even more than that, I'm going to use the area above the power plant to be another holding tank, basically, for water. Then I'm going to cover it all up like dirt, so it looks kind of like a mesa, and that's going to give me another big source of water to keep everything nice and hydrated. Now, last episode, you can see what I started to do is put on top this big giant roof, as well as starting to seal it all off. You can see I also have this giant art installation. For long-term to continue building, I think I'm going to have to, unfortunately, get rid of that art installation. I'll keep some of it around just so they can get down to finish that kind of dirt retaining wall. So I'll give them a few days for that. What I can do, though, is start to plan some of this to be greened. I think what I'd like to do is get rid of some of these hills. I think that will make my job a little bit easier here. So I'll plan on dynamite going on each of these just to flatten it up a little bit. I do like having some of the mix of terrain, but it's kind of awkward to get this irrigated otherwise, so out it goes. Now, I can get beavers in here to clean up the little odds and ends pieces, but I think we could probably reuse some of this. Like, this would be a good pond, as would potentially this to get some of this irrigated. So why don't I plan on that? This is a nice deep pond. We can keep this around. Maybe we'll just round it up a bit so it doesn't look quite so blocky. And I think we've got an opportunity here to use another underground river. Now, I'm not going to do this completely like I did in the north with like massive underground rivers everywhere. I want to do something a little bit more subtle here. I'm just going to make kind of a nice discrete passageway underneath like that. And then I'll come back with platforms as well as dirt to hide that little connection. So this will be nice and solid and green. And we can just seal it off from running off the map. That queued up, let's turn our attention back over to the power plant. I think that all of this is sealed off. Yeah, I see they got the retaining wall. I think we can finish removing the rest of this art installation, and then we can get into designing the actual water tank. I think the other thing I need to do is seal off this edge here. You can see I've got this last section that you can see into the actual power plant. So I think we can go around all of this and seal it off with dirt. I'm just going to continue that pattern of trying to make this thing super discreet looking. Just like that. Now, my idea for this is kind of similar to what I did in the northern part of the map, except taking advantage of 3D dirt. So you can see up here, I made this giant dam structure, and I have mixed feelings of how this turned out. The idea was it was kind of supposed to look like a mesa. You know, it's functional, but it could have turned out a lot nicer. I figured this is going to be a little bit of attempt 2. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to make this a big holding tank connected to the pipe network, and then try to sculpt the exterior. But this time I'm going to try to use dirt so it looks a little bit more natural. With this building, I've got a little bit of a funky pipe setup going on, so I think we kind of have to figure that out. So if you haven't watched all these playthroughs, what I have on this map is 2 levels of pipes at the very bottom of the map. I've got one carrying bad water and one doing good water. Now the bad water one eventually discharges into our power plant down here. So it spills out into something like this, where I've got a bunch of these water wheels, and it zigzags in and out off the map. So this new holding tank is going to be built on top of that. What I want this tank to do is be kind of a backup tank. So the easiest thing I could do, for example, would just be to connect a pipe like this, seal it all off, and there you go, we're done. Water comes in, water comes out. The problem is, this pipe is connected to a bunch of other stuff, and if I just connect it to a massive holding tank, a lot of my incoming water is going to be wasted on it, when really I just want this as a backup tank. So what I'm going to do is set up a series of sluice gates to deprioritize when this tank gets filled, but still let it top everything off during the dry season. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to make this input pipe all the way at the top. So I'm going to have a one-way sluice gate up here, and I'm going to have another one-way sluice gate down here. And what this is going to do is that only when the pipe is at full capacity everywhere else will it start letting water through here. Back in the game, let's figure that part of the design out first then. Right here, I've got the end of the good water pipe, and I can see that if I look at the very bottom of the map. What I think I could do is I could fairly easily cut into this pipe, have it run across, and then get over to this part of the structure. In fact, we have logs and planks elsewhere. We could probably even just cut into that pipe right here. For where to put the intake and outtake valves, this looks like very close to that pipe, and this is where I'm going to probably do it. You will notice that this is deeper though, so that's going to mean I'm going to get kind of stagnant water in here that I can never get out. I think that's fine. It can just be used to keep the rest of this green. But over here, I think this is where the water would then come out. This is going to go up all the way to the top of the map in the shape of the pipe, and whatever I determine to be the top of this structure, that's going to be where I'm going to let water in. And then we just need to figure out a way to encase this somehow, which would probably look a little bit like this. And we'll have to kind of come back here and make it look pretty later. So if that's the plan, I'm thinking I should preemptively start preparing that TNT to connect. So with that taken care of, I think the next step is going to be to seal off the floor with impermeable floors. This looks like a lot, but these are relatively cheap. And then it's going to be figuring out how to sculpt the edge of this mesa top. And after a while of tinkering, I've ended up with this monstrosity. Kind of fitting right next to Junkertown. Junkertown, I have a real mountain that I hollowed out to make a city, and over here I have something man-made that I turned into a mountain. I know it still looks a little bit square, but I tried to disguise it a little bit to look like natural terrain. I still do need to top this off and figure out the rest of the pipe. But before I do, one of the things I was thinking of doing is putting in some tubeways to make construction of this easier. Because there's going to be a lot of vertical climbing, I figure I could put a tubeway inside this actual construction, get a way to get up to the top of this building really discreetly. I'm thinking probably somewhere close to the pipe would be ideal. And I'm going to preemptively hollow out this channel to make room for the pipe, but put in some temporary sluice gates just so we don't, lose our pipe pressure. but that will at least let us design kind of the rest of this upward pipe. Now for the tube system, let me first verify that they can actually build upward from within a tube, because that will really determine how I build this out. Well, no, it says that it is too far away. Now, I'm going to try a technique I noticed when I was messing around in Dev World. I noticed that if I built two pipes side by side going upward, that they could actually build them. You know, this might be a bug, and I'm not sure if it's still going to always be around, but let's see if that works. And unfortunately, it looks like they might have patched that away from experimental, because it says that they can't manage to build up from here. Well, that is too bad. I think what I'm going to have to do is build some temporary scaffolding up here, build the tube inside, and then I can tear apart the scaffolding from the outside. I still have access to the inside over here. I can probably just run a quick road all the way over here, finish out these platforms, and do just that. You know, one thing I'm going to try. I saw release notes that said tube-way stations and zip lines are supposedly not affected by flooding. I don't know how accurate that is, but let me give that a go. I wonder if I could actually put a two-way station exit point inside the middle of this water. I'll use it for now just to, you know, kickstart the construction, but that would be kind of interesting if it's just like a flooded two-way station all the time. Now, with that two-way station on the inside, let's try to finish up going upward. Now, one of the things I'm going to do here is build the scaffolding for the roof of this thing. And, you know, I think right now we are nice and flush with Junkertown. So I'm going to keep that, which means that I should have a layer of dirt on top of this thing. So I think that means this is going to have to go down at least one additional height. But this brings me to my next kind of challenge with this design. I need to make sure the roof of this thing stays green. And something I learned last episode is that dirt doesn't count as irrigated if water is only touching it from below. It has to touch it from the side. So if this roof is dirt, it's probably only going to get irrigated kind of around the perimeter, but the stuff in the middle is no go. Now there's two ways I could probably address this. One is where I kind of had like dirt plugs on the top of the surface dipping into the reservoir below. That will allow them to communicate the water. The other thing I could do is I could make points where the water can actually spill out to the surface into ponds. Now the ponds will irrigate much more efficiently, but you're going to see the water, and they're kind of going to have to stick up above everything. Well, I already did the plug technique last time. I'm going to try the irrigated ponds. We'll see how that one works. So that said, probably the next important step then is to just outline the roof for all of this. I am going to try to use those giant massive platforms. See if that's any easier. This is just going to be a repeated pattern of putting down some large overhangs, and then I can put down that giant platform on top. And then I think once everything is done, I'll probably just have to go in and fill in the odd, like the little holes here and there. And I know I said I'm done making mega structures on this map, but I guess I just can't help myself. I see something, I'm like, oh yeah, I can solve it this way. And then before I know it, I've built a giant monstrosity again. I swear, this one is probably the last one for this map. Probably. Okay, I've got a nice solid roof here. And you can imagine everything not covered already is going to be filled in with dirt. Before I get to that point, though, I want to build all the foundation, though, and be able to see what's actually going on. And, you know, later on, I might come back here and try to sculpt this dirt a little bit nicer. But I think the most important thing is to continue to get that solid tube-way operational. I think the easiest way to probably do that is just to get a build point from over here. Like, we can easily get a road up here, and there's tons of material there. This is going to look really odd, but I think we could just do something like this. At this point, though, I think I'm going to give a little bit of time to clear the build queue. There's a consequence to having so many build previews, and I'd like to just get some of those taken care of. So let's pass some time and see if I can get at least the foundation for this tube-way station going up here, and then we can start planning again. As the tube-way station is going in, though, I did notice a bottleneck. We are running out of dirt. Now, if we look at a piece of dirt, it takes 6 dirt for each of these blocks. And each one of these excavators can produce 6 dirt in 2 hours. And that's going to take a lot of days to build that giant mountain. I'm just going to put down some TNT and try to double this. And we can get right back to building that mountain. Hey there, and welcome to the future. So, it's been a couple seasons. These beavers have had some time to build, and we've ended up with this. I'm so-so on the shape, but I did try to make it a little bit more natural looking. It's just still a giant cube, though, so there's only so much I can do without just spending a massive amount of dirt. Oh, and you're probably wondering about this new art installation. Well, this was the new scaffolding I built. I decided to try something new. And so I have all my scaffolding now built from one tiny platform here, which used, wow, I never actually saw the full cost of that altogether. That was pricey. Over 1,000 metal blocks went into that thing. Art installation aside, we've got this massive giant dam in there. Now, the only thing I haven't done is I haven't readied the ponds on top of this. So this entire thing, once I connect it, it's going to start filling with water. And this will be our new backup supply. And again, we still got our working power plant all the way down there. The one catch is I just need to connect it to the pipe. So that's easy. We're in a bad tide, so we'll do that later. Now, that'll take a while, but at least while that's in progress, we can get rid of our art installation. Let's see how badly this hangs. Whew, had to cut there. Lots of debris, but that was like a 20-second hang. But anyways, now that we've got a nice clear view, we can figure out what we're going to do for the water supplies at the top. Now, this structure down here is lower than our dam all the way on the other side of the map. So water should naturally rise all the way to the surface. So I think what we could do is we just need to choose places to tap into the surface. And water is naturally going to just like come rushing through the floor. And then what we can do is we can cap that into a sluice gate and have it irrigate into a 3x3 pond. And we're probably going to have to do this a couple places because I think just putting it in the middle is not going to be sufficient. And maybe what we could do is we could just make like a river up here. That might also be a good way of doing this. That way I don't have to puncture a lot of holes for a lot of different ponds. Let's try maybe here. We'll say this is going to be the place that I'm going to dynamite in. Water should be able to come out of there, so all I need to do is build a containment around it. And then I can just connect this to kind of a pond or river. I'm thinking maybe something like that. It's very square given everything else, but I think that's going to be wide enough to irrigate everything up here. Now, while they're working up there, I think this part did finish too. So I think we should be able to at least green this little corner of the map. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. And you can see I'm using that technique where the water goes underneath a tunnel to get to the other area. That is the cleanest technique on flat ground that I've seen. That is something I could have potentially done over here too. For example, if I were to dynamite all through here, you would see the metal floor underneath. And I could put impermeable floors. That would also look pretty good too. It would just be more flush. Yeah, you know, I think I'm going to do that instead. I think that will look a little bit better. Now, that is one of the downsides of messing with dirt, is if you want to get rid of it, you've got to dynamite it. Yeah, I like the look of that better. So I'll just add some staircases, and we'll get some crews down there to fill all of that with impermeable floors. Before we get this topped with water and sealed off, I want to figure out what I can do to get this irrigated too. But what I'm thinking is I might actually be able to connect it with this mesa. Maybe make this a tunnel somehow. That would get water over here, and I can maybe have it cascade down. That also gives me an option maybe to put a pond in here and irrigate that. I don't know. Let's see. Maybe something like this. You can see all I've done here is I've connected these two mesas. I just put a little impermeable floor over our road here, so it's a tunnel. We've got a little pocket of water because now that is connected over to our major dam. And to keep things irrigated, I created a little sluice gate in here that taps into that, just like we did up over here on top of the mesa. And then I've got cascading waterfalls all the way down, and then a cascading waterfall down into here. And then I've also tried doing what we've done elsewhere, where I use the communicating vessels to connect this pond to this pond. So once this is connected, this should all be green in here. And we've got 10 days before the bad season comes back. So maybe what I can do is actually make out a plan of what this could look like. So I'm thinking up here, I don't know what the bots could use. What would look good up on top? I'm thinking maybe a combination of a pine tree forest and canola oil. That's the one vegetation that bots would actually care about because they use that for oil and you get the bonus from it. So let's take a look. What would it look like if I just put canola everywhere? It's a little boring, so we could probably do what I did elsewhere and just kind of create some, I don't know, wind blocks for everything. Something like that. And maybe we can make a run of trees all the way down the center. We've got this kind of nice reflection pond. I think that kind of is fitting. Then after that, we just need to put down some farms and foresters, and we might as well just use the space that we've got on the pond. And as for down here, this is going to be the pine forest. I don't feel like I need to fill all of this in with pines. Maybe I'll do a mix of a forest on this side next to the city, and then kind of leave this area to be a little bit more natural looking. So just kind of try to sprinkle them around, make it kind of a natural looking forest. And then over here, we'll do a much more industrial focused setup, which should give us something like this. I'm going to keep most of this open plains. I'll keep this forester for now to plant the trees, and then after that I'm just going to let them go wild. Overall, I think that's okay. This is kind of funky looking. It looks kind of industrial, and it's got kind of the center atrium with water, which I think is kind of a good mirror for Junkertown over there. I just wish the shape was a little bit better, but that would take so much dirt. So overall, that's looking pretty good, and that gives us more than half of the map that would be green then, once this gets populated. Now, we've still got 8 days before the good water returns. I'm thinking we could queue up a few other things in here, so that when it does, we've got even more stuff green. And I've got a few options. These lakes down here, this lake down there, that's all potential. I think I'm going to start with the hardest one first, which is maybe these chain of 4 mountains. If I could just get water up into one of these lakes, I think then in the future I'd have access to a bunch of other things. I'm pretty certain I could do that if I could just make that water pipe go down this channel and have a pipe going up. That would be good. So that might be doable in the 7 days that we've got. You can see down in this channel, we've already got a pipe most of the way here. We just need to run it down the rest of this river and then kind of beeline it right up there. So I think I'm going to extend that pipe, maybe build some stairs to the top of that cliff, and then we can start running some rounds of TNT. The idea is very similar to other things I've done. I'm just going to carve away from the front of this cliff face to make a vertical pipe, get it up to the level that I need here, and then I can start filling in these ponds. Then I could use aqueducts to just bridge across each of these canyons. Now I'm using stairs for now, but I think once I'm up at the top, I'm going to replace it with a tubeway to make getting access a little bit easier. Kind of like that. Now, in the time it's taken to build this, it looks like we are just about to enter the wet season again. So, we've got water coming back in. I have a feeling they will finish this up in the few days that we've got in the wet season, so we may actually get some green up here. I'm most looking forward to seeing some green get up to this area here. I don't know how much of this we're actually going to fill, so we might not actually see it green, but we should start seeing the tank get filled up. The other thing I'm excited about is you'll notice that in the time it's taken to build all this stuff, my science peaked over close to 700k. If you haven't been following some of my prior episodes, I added a new rule that every time I get to an interval of 250k science, I can pick a water source and double it, just as a way of speeding up turning this map green. While I was building this, I hit 500k and I have doubled the water source up at our main dam again. So hopefully this is going to be like a massive fire hose. So with that in mind, I think the only thing I haven't done here is open up the gate to start filling this up. Also, this looks really junky with all this debris. The problem is I produce stuff so quickly that this is probably, oh, look at, there's a lot of material here. Look at all these metal blocks and planks. We just don't need it because we produce so much material that we just replaced it. I could destroy it. I feel really bad destroying it because it's so wasteful. I don't know, maybe I can just expand my construction supplies down here as someplace to put it all. So otherwise it feels so wasteful to lose all that material. But let's take a peek inside and see if our dirt pipe in here is actually moving water up. Well, nothing yet, unfortunately. What's up with that? I would have expected at least something. Oh, that's it. It just hasn't gotten here. It's just rapidly rushing down the line. Coming up to the pipe. And then if all goes well, this should start moving up. Oh yeah, it's coming up quite rapidly. Now, if it could probably change one thing in this design, I think it would be to change the intake area here. Right now I'm only letting in 2, so that's about 4.4 CMS, the limit. Probably would have been much better served if I had really cranked that up. You know what, it's not too late for that. I think that's what I'm going to do. Just like that, we'll triple the flow through there. Now, I can see water coming to the bottom, so that's a good sign. We're just going to have to watch out for any leaks through here. looking down underneath here, I'm not seeing any water fall through, and peeking on the inside, everything is looking good. It's going to fill this lower chamber first, and then it should just keep on going up. And you know, this thing is so massive that I have a feeling we're not really going to fill it this wet season. So we may not actually be able to plant any of this for another season or two at that rate. This is looking promising though. You can see I've got water starting to come out to the lake here. Now we do have to cap that off because eventually that will overflow, but that's looking pretty good. Oh, actually there is something I did forget to do here. For water coming out, this should actually be behind a sluice gate, or eventually this will overflow. We've got some time before that happens though, so I can just rush build that. And unfortunately, we are ending up with a short wet season. Well, that's too bad. I know one thing that I can do though. In the act of me getting all this prepped, I did put a dam down at the bottom of this river. I think we can actually more permanently open up these floodgates here to start flooding this part of the river. Yeah, that's turning that river nice and green. And you can see when I was installing this tubeway to get easy access up to that upper mesa, I did install a few stepwise dams in here, just enough to keep everything topped off. But I am liking how this map is evolving. I have a feeling that for the rest of this, I'm probably just going to go straight and just make it a whole giant forest. We really don't need much economy at this point at all. And as we enter into the last day of this wet season, I think we're at a good stopping point for this episode. So at this point, I think we're over halfway done greening the map. Now our giant water tank down here is going to set us back maybe a season or two filling everything up. But I can continue planning the rest of the map in the meantime. And I have to say, I like how this valley turned out. I haven't been back here since we worked on it earlier in this episode, but Beaver Hobbiton does look pretty nice in here. We've got our dock in there, we've got all our farms with the tree lines. This guy, he gets his own fence for whatever reason. I was being generous for whatever farmer that was. We've got our beaver cemetery with a fully grown forest around it up here. And this absolutely massive amount of trees that I just spammed everywhere. I'm sure that is absolutely doing wonders for my frame rate. But yeah, I think the most happy with this part down here. This farmland, I think, turned out pretty nice. This farmland in here, it's kind of empty as intended. I think it's almost ready for me to remove the planting indicators. And let's see, we've got pine trees going in here. And again, this thing, it will look better, I think, once it's topped off. And peeking inside, we're maybe a quarter of the way there. Things are looking pretty good. I think we're maybe 1 or 2 episodes out from wrapping this up, and then I'm looking forward to maybe trying out one of the medium-sized maps next, and then really leaning into some of those new features in Update 7. As always, I hope you enjoy these videos, and I hope to catch you next time.